Welcome to the land of fog, Eastern North Carolina in April. So weird. So nice though. It's going to be 85 here today, which is totally awesome. And it's going to be 50 on Saturday. So I thought, well, we might as well get out here and enjoy this good weather. Good morning. Good morning. Just me and the dog out here. Yes, it is. Got children off at school. It's kind of a quiet day. Just did a subscriber video. Yesterday was my birthday, which was fun and exciting. Went out to dinner with some friends and my littlest one with autism, Amos, who did really well. I did say that he did suck milk through a straw off the sidewalk. But, you know, we can't be worried about everything. So I opened up this letter this morning. I was opening up birthday cards, and I get this letter, and it's from my children's school. Now, when I talk about the letter, I need to preface this with, oh, happy Passover from Israel. Is the fog burning off? No, the fog is just coming in. It's so weird. It's weird for fog to show up later. It's an attendance letter. So people are like, I can't believe your school sent that. No. Attendance letters are required by the state of North Carolina. So I want everybody to understand that. I get these attendance letters because I never send in a note to explain why somebody was absent. We also miss days for fun. But here's what this is what the law is. So see, this is not school. The reporting requirements of the North Carolina Compulsory School Attendance Law, GS 115-378, as amended by House Bill 558, requires that after not more than 6 unexcused absences, the principal shall notify the parent, guardian, or custodian. So North Carolina law requires that I get this letter. And I'm not against the letter, honestly. I think that we want to make sure that kids are at school. We don't want there to be some parent that's like maybe too lazy to take them. I don't know this parent because it seems totally worthwhile to me to get people to school early so that you have, 6 hours of freedom, but call me crazy. But anyway, it's important. Kids need to be at school. I get it. What I find is ironical. That's not a word. What I find is humorous is that this law comes with the other laws that are happening in the state. So we have a law that children, they can't miss school, but now we have a new law that there are no background checks required for handguns. I just don't understand who's making the laws. But the best one is that General Statute 115C 592, not 378, is scholarship funds should be expanded for a personal education student account. So this happened last week. They're like, we are going to expand the voucher program. And there are a lot of people that are like, well, what's wrong with a voucher? Your kids go to private school. What's wrong with school choice? And this is really a discussion to explain what school choice is so that you do understand it. And I will also say that I am conservative. I think a lot of conservatives say that I'm not, but I am particularly fiscally conservative. And North Carolina this year is spending, let's see how much money we're spending this year. $31 million on vouchers this year. Now, the research shows, Justin Parmenter shared, no empirical data shows vouchers improve student outcomes. $31 million is a lot of money in my mind. And so if we're going to spend money and tax dollars on something, I want to know where it's going. Now, public schools have to follow lots of requirements, right? They have to send a letter if a child misses 6 days unexcused. They have to be tested before, after, based on the children's test scores. The school gets a grade. This is a big deal. What is a voucher for in North Carolina? Well, there were 3 vouchers, Rachel, but now they've kind of been pushed into one thing, and it's called ESA Plus, Educational Savings Account Plus. So a voucher right now is only available for families who meet the income requirements or if the child has special needs. But the new law wants to expand vouchers. Senator Lee has proposed this new bill that all families would be eligible for at least $3,200. All families in North Carolina would be eligible for that. So that's kind of a big deal, right? And I honestly don't even know if it's not that I think there are families who live somewhere and deserve access to a different school system if they're really struggling. But what you don't know is that already can happen. So if you're in a school district and you're really not getting good services, you can ask, and it does happen because I know several families, not in my district, but around the country, where the school district will pay for a child to go to private school. I have a friend in New Hanover County. Their child's tuition is paid for at a private school through the school district, right? So this is important. In order to be a private school in North Carolina, you have to submit a notice of intent to operate a conventional private K-12 school. That takes about 30 minutes, along with a copy of a fire inspection and a certificate of occupancy of where you're going to be. So in 45 minutes, you could have your school set up. School choice is beneficial to students who are stuck in a failing school. So Phyllis, I think that's what we're told. But why is there no data that supports children with access to school choice are performing better than they are in their traditional schools? I should be able to see data that proves that. Because if we're going to spend, if this bill passes, $300 million a year and $500 million a year in the next 10 years, shouldn't we make it so that we know the outcomes are at least as good? We don't do any research on it. I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem. So Amos, because I know the most about Amos, my little Amos, our school district gets $15,471 to educate Amos. This is my public school. They get $9,865 from North Carolina, $4,093 from in-state for exceptional children, and they get $1,514 in federal money. Now, $15,471. If I took advantage of all the school vouchers available to me when this bill passed, do you know how much money we would be given? I have asked this question to 2 senators, Mark Johnson when he was school superintendent, Governor, what's his name? What's our governor's name? Roy Cooper. I asked this question. So Amos gets $15,471. If we choose the voucher program, we will get $21,207. Okay. $21,000 from $15,471. So what's that? A little over $5,000. So Adrienne is going to leave her public school. Now, if school choice is the goal, if what these politicians are saying with this new House bill, we want families to have choice, then why can't I choose my public school? Why can't I have that $5,000 extra and allocate it to White Oak Elementary? If anyone can answer me, I'll give you a year free because the governor cannot answer me. Dan Forest could not answer me, and nor could the senators I asked. No one can answer me. If it's about school choice, there's like red bugs on my screen. I'll probably get in my legs. If school choice is a real thing, then shouldn't I have the option to have that money and take it to my public schools? Data is not required by private schools. Parents are so in tune to their child, they know the child is benefiting. So see, Phyllis, I don't agree. I don't think that parents necessarily know what's benefiting. And the reason I know that is because we have research about that very thing. So years ago in the 80s, we didn't have any research regarding childcare programs. People are starting to work, women are working, kids are going to childcare programs. And the reason there was no research is because when we said to parents, are you happy with your child's childcare program? Do you know what they said? Yes, I'm happy. I love Miss Pat and I love my childcare program. I love it. It's wonderful. So the government would say, or research institutions, well, we don't need research because the parents are happy. If the parents are happy, that's all that matters. Well, fortunately, somebody said, you know what, let's go look anyway. It's not going to hurt anything. And what we realized was that there was a huge discrepancy in quality and how the quality made for a good childcare program. So what we realized is parents were not the best ones to articulate what quality was, right? Just like you might not be the best person to tell me why I need a knee replacement. Just because you have knees doesn't make you the knee expert. Just because you're a parent with a child in childcare program doesn't mean you're the expert on quality. We know that this is kind of a scientific, quantitative thing that we can measure. And so we really pushed then for higher quality programs. And it was really a test of, wow, parents really didn't know what they should be looking for. And I think in this case, until we have data, I have a PhD in research. I love data. I think it's really, really important. So Robin said, what's the breakdown of the money? What makes up the 15 versus the 20,000? Well, the 15, Robin, is what Amos gets right now from the state of North Carolina, the State Exceptional Children Fund. This is through the regular public school system. And then he gets $1,514 in federal money. If he were to get the $21,200, that would be Amos's family would apply for a education savings account, and the General Assembly would take $21,207 and plop it into our account so that we could pay for a different education for him. So that's the difference. Now, for Amos, obviously, it wouldn't save the state any money, but that's kind of the biggest thing that you read and hear is that when you look on edchoice.nc website, okay, so EdChoice, you're going to see something where it says 60% average account value as a percentage of public school per student. So what that says is we can give people money and typically save money. If we give, so let's say the new bill is $3,246 is what they want to give all families. So let's say you've got an anesthesiologist, and right now his child is in public school in North Carolina. So public school cost how much? The average cost of public school per child, average expenditure is $9,900. So almost $10,000 in North Carolina. So when your child sets a toe in public school, that's the average expense that North Carolina is paying for your child to be there. Amos's is obviously higher because he has disabilities, but your child is about, let's say, $9,500. The state says to the anesthesiologist, hey, we'll give you $3,246. And the anesthesiologist says, okay, well, that means I can send my child to Ravenscroft, great school in Raleigh. Ravenscroft is, I don't know, 20 or 30,000. So the state gives the anesthesiologist the $3,200. The anesthesiologist pays the $25,000 extra. And then the state says, we've just saved how much? we've just saved 60% because we were spending almost $10,000, and now we're going to give him $3,200, and now we don't have to spend anything. So in this case, it's a real money maker, right? It's going to save the state money. Now, what you're not told is, and Ravenscroft is an excellent school, Ravenscroft doesn't have to follow the law on attendance. Ravenscroft doesn't have to do testing. Ravenscroft's teachers don't have to be licensed. All these things in private schools are totally a free-for-all. So you have people that are saying, we want school choice, but really what they're saying is, we want to not put money into public education because we can do it cheaper a different way. And then you have to think, so maybe you're saying, well, what's the problem with that? It's going to save taxpayers money. You said you were conservative. What do you care? So consider where I live. I live in eastern North Carolina. It's beautiful, foggy, on the water. What a great place to live. And we have one little private school near us that's about, I don't know, $5,500 a year. So we're going to have students that suddenly have access to a private school that is not being monitored, right? And I'm not saying it's a bad public school, but there are no rules. So suddenly, if the money goes to our traditional public school, we have all these rules. And if it goes to the private school, we have no rules. And it's just not fair. And how do we know where the money's going? Because the law currently is, in order to be considered a private school, submit a notice of intent to operate a conventional private K-12 school. All you have to do is have a GED, along with a copy of a fire inspection and certificate of occupancy. That's all. That's all you have to do. You don't have to have a PhD. You don't have to have a college diploma. You don't have to have licensed teachers. You don't have to have a curriculum plan. I want you to think about, if you have a child in public school right now, all the things that your teachers have to do and that your principals have to do. They have to send letters like this. They have to have somebody in the school who is in charge of sending me a letter to tell me that Amos has had 6 unexcused absences. If your child takes the money and goes to the private school, they don't have to send a letter. Why is that fair? Why is that fair? So this is good. There are not enough private options if everyone could get a voucher. Okay, great. So Elizabeth, where I live, we have one little private school. My daughter went to it for a year. I have friends that go there. They like it. Lawrence Academy. Amos has disabilities. So even if the state says to me, we're going to give you $21,207 to leave the public school system, where in the am I going to go? There is no school that takes Amos here. There's none. It's public school or homeschool, which is not a viable option for the Wood family. 1, I work, and 2, I'm inept, and 3, Amos needs access to typically developing peers, and they don't live in this house. We have a dog and 2 cats and 3 teenagers. So I have no option. None. And so what you're going to see in small eastern North Carolina towns is you're going to see private schools pop up exactly as she just said. And you know who's going to be left at the public school? Amos, kids with disabilities, and kids whose parents aren't organized or have the time or the education to figure out how to apply for these ESAs, for the vouchers. So you're going to have a public school that's missing a tremendous amount of money, and it's going to be left with people that are struggling in so many other ways and kids with disabilities. And then you know what happens? And then at that point, the Wood family says, you know what? We love Edenton and we love Eastern North Carolina, and it is wonderful here, but we can't live here any longer because we have no access to a good education. And then people start moving out of small Eastern North Carolina towns. Is that what we want? Is that what people in North Carolina want? Don't you want Eastern North Carolina and the first capital of the colonies to be a place to go visit where amazing people live and work and run boat companies and are physicians? I do. I do. I do. This is not about choice. No one gives a flying you know what about you having choice. And the people out there that are like, we need choice, you are in it, you are saying that for the right reason. I do not fault you. But the movement of what is happening is not about choice. It is about money. It is about defunding our public school system in a way so that it will fail, and that then we only have privatizers. And every child in the state is going to be offered. So the most you can get through this voucher program would be $3,246. And then where are all those tax dollars going to go? I don't know. I don't know. The other thing you don't know is you take your voucher and you go to the private school. And I know a family in North Carolina this year that told me the story. So they really were unhappy with all the testing at public school because it's a big thing. 3rd grade through up, there's a lot of testing. And they got currently you have to apply to get the waiver, to get the voucher. If you have a child with disabilities, you don't automatically get it. So that's another thing this bill is doing, is expanding this amount of money up to $500 million. So they send their child to the private school, which the money pays pretty much all the tuition for the private school. And it starts off okay. Well, by about the end of a semester, it's not going well. What a child that has a disability now is seen as somebody with behavior problems because the school doesn't have any working with exceptional children. There's no IEP, there's no occupational therapist, there's no speech therapist, there's no exceptional child person, there's no behavioral plan in place, there's no access to the people at DPI to help you. It's not good. So the child leaves the private school and comes back to the public school. So then the public school says, come on in, we're going to take you back, because that's what they have to do. So now that child is being educated at the public school, and the public school didn't get money for that child. There's no money that's transferred back over. And so that's the plan as well. So it won't be until next year that that child will be funded to be back in the public school system. And I don't know about y'all, but I pay taxes quarterly. So every 3 months I send a check to the government. And $3,000, $7,000, $17,000, like this money, I feel this coming out of my bank account. You know, I get it. You know, my daughter's saying, I need new bedding for Easter. And I'm saying to her, Easter is not a time you get a present. That's a birthday present. For Easter, maybe you get a pair of, like, you know, $30 rubber Birkenstocks. Like, I'm reasonable, but like, no. We don't have thousands of dollars laying around for stuff because we're paying taxes. And I want my tax dollars to be used in a smart way. You're welcome, Brian. I'm a public school teacher in North Carolina. You've explained the situation perfectly. Education is not the most popular topic on my blog. I have a subscriber group where I think people are really keen on these discussions, but education is really important to me. And I think what happens, or has happened to me, is that I get so frustrated that I just shut down and don't talk about it, because it is really, it feels very real to me. And to give a voucher to a wealthy family in Wake County, you cannot explain to me how that makes sense. Why should a family making $1 million a year be given $3,246 so that their child can go to private school? Now, you might say to me, well, your kids go to private school. They do. But the taxpayers don't pay for my kids to go to private school. So if you live in Raleigh, you have access to the CAT bus, right? Public transportation. Everybody has access to public transportation when they live in bigger cities. If you don't like the CAT bus, you can buy a car. Most people on here, I would argue, probably own a car. Some people might have a Tesla. Some people might have a Jeep. Some people might have a Pinto Pacer or a old truck, like my husband. The state does not offer us $3,246 to subsidize our car because we don't like the public transportation system. In fact, where I live, we don't even have one. And the state does not offer me money to be transported. It's not a possibility. Why is it any different? Honor! Cut! Hush! Why is it any different? Why should education be paid for, but not public transportation? These are things we have to be thinking about and talking about, because I think we've been fed a lot of rhetoric. Here's one of the biggest rhetoric we think is school choice is for poor families in terrible schools. That's what we're told. School choice is for poor families in terrible schools. And we're like, well, we want to help these people. This makes school choice available to every family in North Carolina. And the $3,200 is 10% of their tuition. Do you think going to Ravenscroft for $30,000 is now suddenly available for the woman who works at McDonald's and makes $16,000 a year? Is this going to help her? No. How is that $3,200 going to help her? And if she's low income, she's going to get $4,200. So now we're going to say to her, well, here's $4,200 and the school is $30,000. Can you go now? Negative, Ghost Rider. No, sirree, I can't go. This makes me nervous. My husband and I have just made the decision to move to North Carolina. It seemed like a great move due to his job offer. I will have him watch this when he gets home. We have a child with an IEP. So Amanda, I would say that absolutely, that is not absolutely the problem. I live in a small eastern North Carolina town. We have a child with an IEP. Amos spends over half the day in a traditional second grade classroom, and then he also is in the exceptional children's room. I love his school. I love his teachers. I think it is wonderful. If this happened, would it screw the school up? Yes. But I will tell you, I will go down fighting to make sure this doesn't happen. And that's why we advocate. If all of us say no and we vote for the right people, this won't happen. That's all we have to do, is to say no and speak the truth. This is not an opinion-based thing. This is just a factual conversation where people have been misinformed. I would also say if you live in Raleigh and you have a child with autism, generally those children are put into AU classrooms, which is interesting. Why don't they put a cap on who gets the voucher? So they currently do have a cap on who gets the voucher nanny. That is exactly how it is now. But General Lee, sorry, like General Robert E. Lee, Senator Lee, I don't know if he's related to Robert E. Lee. Senator Lee wants this available to everybody. Everybody. No one should be excluded from the new bill. That is why I'm here to tell you, does that make sense to you? And I hope after you've sat here and listened, you're like, what you talking about, Willis? What? How does that make sense? And again, if Amos gets currently $15,471, and now they're saying to me, you can have $21,000. If the state of North Carolina really cares about people with special needs, Senator Lee, why can't I have the $21,000 and give it to White Oak Elementary? Explain me that, Toots. You know why? Because that doesn't help them get rid of public schools. And listen, years ago when people told me they're defunding public schools, I was like, you mofos are crazy. Ain't nobody doing that. Well, then the more you start looking, the more you're like, holy crap, I've become a conspiracy theorist. They really are doing this. I mean, Ed Choice, if you go to Ed Choice and you read 60% average account value as percentage of public school per student, what that means is when we give people choices, it only costs us 60% of what we're currently spending. We're gonna get loaded. Loaded. Yes, Senator Michael Lee. That's right. He's only for the wealthy. So Michael Lee wants to give every millionaire in North Carolina $3,200. So they have like basically a drop in the bucket for their child to go to private school. Somebody that it's not going to matter. And I have 2 children in boarding school, very expensive private school that their grandparents pay for. And if they didn't, would my children be there? I don't think so. We would have to be making very different choices in our life, but I don't think so. I don't think it would have ever been an option. And it's a great education. That's the thing. When you spend money, you get a great education. So what you're seeing is the General Assembly saying, we're going to spend less money and they're going to get a private school education. And we're not going to do any little digging into like what the private school is doing. They don't have to send a letter if they miss school. They don't have to do testing. They can take the CAT test. No assessment. They don't have to have an exceptional children's person, which is federal law. This private school thing is going to save the state of North Carolina a ton of money. No, you would not be able to use the voucher for private school outside of North Carolina. But Elizabeth, now that they probably, Senator Lee's going to watch this video and think, shoot, now I can use this to send children to boarding school. What in the hell is happening out here? My God, the bass boats are coming through. I hope they're being careful. I can't even see them. And Eastern North Carolina is like a magical place to live, right? It is amazing and beautiful and magical. And our public schools are awesome, but they need our help and they need our advocacy because they cannot survive with this kind of crap. They just can't. And then Amos is left there all by himself with the very poor people. And so it used to be, just if you're really keen on this subject, it used to be charter schools were kind of the push. But what's happened is we've realized that charter schools still have to follow the rules a teensy bit. And if you look at the data on charter schools, not all charter schools, but the data on charter schools in North Carolina, you will see charter schools have been doing terrible. Well, that's embarrassing to politicians. So they're moving away from pushing charter schools to pushing vouchers. Because charter schools, they're getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar. The grades are terrible. They're awful. They're realizing, oh, we can't hide from this. This is like on television. Everybody's watching to see how these charter schools are doing. But this is a way to give the money and to walk away. It's like when you say to your daughter, I'll give you $10 to not talk to me the rest of the day. You're like, it's $10. If I had talked to her all day, I probably would have spent $40. I think this is just really an important conversation. So much that I think this is what I'm going to do on Wednesday mornings. Kind of a weird time. It probably should be at night when more people can watch because I want public school teachers to be watched. So maybe I'm going to have to pick another night. This might be like a good Monday night thing. Trying to think of what else I could tell you. I have lots of notes. Yeah, so currently in 2019 in North Carolina, we paid $37 million to 405 private schools. We had 8,553 students. So 405 private schools got $37 million. And the other rhetoric you're going to hear, what would be your proposal? So my proposal, Robin, is if they want to spend $500 million on vouchers, what I would argue is take that $500 million and let's put it into our public school system. Let's bring back the Teaching Fellows program. We know that that's how we got good teachers. Now we have undone, now you're not going to get retirement once you've worked for 30 years making basically nothing where we live. Make North Carolina like a lot of other states where the same amount of money goes per child instead of where you live. So like in Vermont, no matter where you live, you get the same amount of money per kid. You do not in Edenton. So in Raleigh, a teacher might get a $5,000 supplement to their salary. And in North Carolina or where I live, it might be $300. How can we get teachers to come and teach here when they can make so much more money in bigger places? You know, how can we get them? Teaching fellows are one thing, retirement. If we're going to spend $500 million, what could we do? They could also release the Leandro funds. Absolutely. The Leandro funds, which the Supreme Court has ruled upon, would bring $3 million to my district. That's money we're shorting. But the problem is, see, if we get that money, then the General Assembly is going to have to acknowledge, holy crap, they can really provide a good public education. So now what are we going to do? Now we can't argue that the public school is terrible, right? And their spouses make more money in bigger places. Local supplements are paid for by the county. Yes, and our county doesn't have the money. Our county does not have the money. Oh, you're welcome, Pam. Honor, come here. Quiet. God, dog. I'd like to send that dog to private school with a voucher. I'm just kidding. So the more people that are taking the money from the public school system, the less money we have to ensure that we educate properly. And again, if you are in a public school, teachers have to be licensed. The curriculum is regulated. Schools are graded on test scores. We have attendance policies. We have everything is turnkey. And the reason we're doing all that testing is because the General Assembly loves to do it. And where I live, we know that, or not where I live, but we know that grades on schools are related to poverty. But still, we have to do it. So you have a district like mine that is 72% free and reduced lunch. And we are hustling and we're pushing testing. And parents are leaving the public school because they don't like all the testing. Well, the testing is happening because of the General Assembly, because they want to prove that our schools suck. And they don't. What they're really not acknowledging is that we are high poverty. And that's why our grade is low. And if you would just give us the money and let us teach and pay teachers, we could pull kids out of poverty. Give us pre-K money. But that doesn't suit the agenda. Did I say that like in a very clear and concise way? I hope so. I hope you get that. I really do. The General Assembly pushes testing. Testing pushes families out of public school. We give vouchers to those families. They stay in private school where there's no testing. There's also no rules regarding anything. Our public schools whittle away till they're kids with disabilities and poor people. And we just throw them away because we don't care about them. And so then a family either has to move or just deal with it. You know? Deal with it. It's a problem. So when you hear a politician and they say to you, we need school choice. Families need to be able to do what's best for their child. I want you to say, why is school choice best for their child? Tell me, what is that private school going to offer? What data has shown that they're offering better outcomes than my public school system? How come they don't have to do testing? Why don't their teachers have to be licensed? Why don't we do any assessment on the $37 million that went to 405 private schools in 2019? share this, come over and subscribe, and let's make me know that this is important, so that when I'm like, you know what, am I going to run for senator? Will anybody vote for me? I hope so. I hope so. Because I'm sure they'll stick me down in some basement office where people used to smoke, and I won't be allowed to come out. But this matters. It matters. Public education is what is going to keep North Carolina and Eastern North Carolina a viable place, not a town that shuts down. Trust me, it matters. Do you want to spend money on people to sit in prison? Because that's what's going to happen. It's like my daughter said the other day, well, why don't we sell our condo in Raleigh and buy a new car? And I said to her, so in 15 years, that new car is going to be worth how much? Nothing. And you're not going to have a condo. It's like that's what our General Assembly is doing. They're not thinking about the fact that when we stop educating, we're going to have people in prison, and that's going to cost $35,000 a year. Because what they're thinking is, well, I'm alive right now, and I want to save money today. The same people that don't, worry about leaving more to the next generation. I hope that when I leave this earth, that I will leave my children's children more than I was left with, right? Like that is what's important. Good question, Heidi. Is that who we're voting for? We are voting for people who want to save money today so they can spend a lot more money tomorrow, because they don't care. And it's telling that when you're a senator or in the General Assembly, you make like $13,000 a year. Most people cannot work for $13,000 a year. So you have people that are very educated that can't go run for those positions because they can't afford that. So I'm now at a point where if I could keep doing my blog, I could afford $13,000 a year. But I would argue now that we need to pay senators and people in the General Assembly $150,000 a year, which we have the money to do instead of vouchers. But then you know what would happen? We would get educated, smart, motivated people who would lead their positions, maybe as public defenders or public school teachers or head of EC departments or school superintendents. And they would run for these office jobs, senator, rep, and they would do something because finally they have money, So we keep the salary super low so that the right people won't run. No shit. I'm serious. They love it. They love it. Then you just get a bunch of rich white dudes. And no offense, I'm married to a white dude. I wouldn't say rich, but upper middle class. But at least he uses his brain. And when you belong to a child with a disability, you have to stay tuned. It's important. That's awesome, Robin. My General Assembly representative is a principal in Greensboro with a PhD. That's great. I cannot imagine how they can be a principal and in the General Assembly, though, because you have to be in Raleigh so much. But that's great. I can't imagine trying to do that. Maybe Greensboro is closer to Raleigh. I like my General Assembly person too, actually, but he doesn't know anything about, when I told him about a charter school having some trouble, he said, well, why don't you call DPI? And I was like, the Department of Public Instruction doesn't oversee charter schools. So what I find is that a lot of people that have been voted in have very little knowledge. They're being fed the same, like, we need school choice, and they don't know. They're not from an education background. And I can't blame them if they're willing to learn and know and ask right questions, But anyway, thank y'all. Have a nice day. Help me make Eastern North Carolina a beautiful place that it is, with awesome families, and support our public school system. Because I tell you, I sent a check in today. My blog raised like $3,000 for field trips for Amos's school. And we raised about $5,000 for my daughter's middle school field trips. And wrote a check out. I'm on PTA there, and wrote a check out and I had gotten a thing, and it said we need a reimbursement for $234. And I was like, well, what's the $234 for? It was for bleach. So we are raising money, working concession stands, making popcorn, so that we can raise money to send the principal money for bleach to clean. That's what's happening here. That's what's happening here. But we're going to give the rich dude $3,000 to send his kid to a school for $30,000 a year. And my school doesn't have $234 for bleach. True story.